Hi there, Alex here at mixinglessons.com. In this video, we're going to have a look at the process of EQing your compressor's sidechain. So instead of having your compressor listen to the original version of the track and deciding when to compress, it's going to listen to an EQ'd version of that signal. In this video, we'll look at how to do that and also why that can be really beneficial when you're mixing. As always, I've got 3 free guides for you. I've got an EQ cheat sheet, a compression cheat sheet, and a vocal recording guide. And I think that all 3 will help you to make better recordings and better mixes in your home studio. You can get all 3 by heading over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads. Okay, so we've got a compressor here, and you've got all of the normal parameters that you'd expect to see on a compressor: ratio, threshold, attack, release, and so on. But if you've ever looked at one of your compression plugins, you might have noticed that they sometimes have some EQ controls. And what these EQ controls allow us to do is it allows us to EQ the signal that the compressor is listening to decide when to turn the signal down. So I'll demonstrate how this works using a stereo recording of a drum kit. Now the reason that I've picked a drum kit is because we have different parts of the kit producing different frequencies and they're being played at different times. So we have a kick drum, which has a lot of low end, and then we have a snare drum, which is further up the frequency range. And those 2 things aren't being played at the same time, so it's useful for demonstrating this. So firstly, let's have a look at how this compressor is responding without us EQing the compressor's sidechain. So we can see there that the compressor is turning the signal down each time either the kick drum or the snare drum are played. This gain reduction meter here tells us whenever the signal is being turned down by the compressor. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to EQ the compressor's sidechain. I'm going to EQ the version of the signal that the compressor is listening to, and I'm going to take away some of the low end. And what I'm trying to do is make the compressor only respond to the snare drum. So as you can see, when we take away some of the low end, the compressor stops responding to the kick drum and it's only responding to the snare drum. Now it's not EQing the version of the signal that's ending up in our mix. It's simply changing the version of the signal that the compressor's listening to make the compressor behave differently. So I've demonstrated this on a drum kit because it's easy to see when the kick drum's playing, when the snare drum's playing. They're not playing at the same time. And so it's easy to see this in action. But let's have a little bit of a think about, firstly, what would happen with instruments where the low end and the high end, all of the frequencies were being played all at once. And also let's have a think about some of the practical applications of EQing your compressor's sidechain. First and foremost, something to be aware of is that compressors are generally more responsive to low frequency sounds. So if you think of something like a piano, the compressor is going to be more responsive to the lower notes than it is to the higher notes. Same goes for an acoustic guitar. The compressor is going to be more responsive to what's going on in the low end. Now what can happen is with something like a piano, because you have a broad range of frequencies and whatever the compressor does, it's applying to the entire signal. When you're playing those lower notes, that's going to make the compressor respond, but it's going to apply compression, which is also going to be turning down whatever is being played in the higher end as well. And so that compression that's kind of being triggered from the low end can make the high end sound a little bit more dull. And so in that instance, if you were to EQ your compressor's sidechain, you can make it so that the compressor doesn't hear so much of that low end, and so it doesn't respond to that low end. And you can make it so that the compressor responds in a way which is a little bit more appropriate to everything that's going on in that piano performance, rather than being triggered by what's going on in the low end and then applying that to the whole piano. And as I say, the same can go for acoustic guitar, it can go for vocals, it can go for any instrument where you want to have a bit more control over the way the compressor is responding, because compressors are more responsive to what's going on in the low end. This can actually also be really useful on something like mix bus compression. If the low end in the mix is triggering a lot of compression, by taking some of that low end away, the compressor can respond in a way which is a little bit more suitable to what's going on across the entire frequency range and not just the low end. Now, the other way of looking at this is you might want to make your compressor respond more to certain frequencies than others. And so you could use this to create a de-esser for your vocals, for example. If you were to boost around 7K in the version of the signal that the compressor can hear, that's where those sibilant sounds tend to occur, those sort of harsh S's and T's. And so by making the compressor more sensitive to those frequencies, the compressor will react more to those frequencies. It'll still apply the compression to the entire signal. So if it was a vocal track, for example, the whole vocal track would be compressed, but we're making the compressor more sensitive to those frequencies so that we have greater control over the way the compressor is behaving. So I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to get that free EQ cheat sheet, that free compression cheat sheet, and that free vocal recording guide at mixinglessons.com/free-downloads. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.